today's Chic Assignment check-in for June, we're going to learn more about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Mary Cassatt, and so much more. So make yourself a cup of tea and let's add some culture to our lives. Hi everyone, Jennifer here, and welcome back to the Daily Connoisseur. I'm so excited to be doing the Chic Assignment check-in for June. This was a wonderful assignment this month, and we learned more about Mozart, Mary Cassatt, as well as elegant living and spending meaningful time outdoors. So I'm really looking forward to going through the 4 assignments in more depth with you right now. The Chic Assignment check-in is brought to us by the Elegant Connoisseurs, the upper tier in the memberships feature. All the King's Morsels, a Southern food blog. American Blossom Linens, organic bedding. Awesome Possum Powers, an excellent children's book. Azalea Spa Goods, aromatherapy body oils. Cynthia Rabine's Create Your Own Lookbook. Inspired by Nikki YouTube channel and Etsy store. Julie Coleman Stylist from My Confident Closet. Katie Rose Collection, Fine Art and Creative Work. Melanie Tito's How to Love with a Healing Heart. Rosenda Valenzuela from Little Pink Casa, she did an excellent 10-item wardrobe video I will link below. The Not So Desperate Housewives, Mrs. Hanover. Oh Wondrous Grace magazine. Michelle Rohr from the Secret Owl Society Digital Planners. The Sturm Brothers Custom Design Jewelry. Something to Cherish by artist Cherish Flighter. Catherine Ray, Mercedes Gilligan, and the following: AAM Truth Teller, Bethany Baldwin, Christine Bola, Carolyn Haydu, Denise Jond, Jet Rowley Heron, Heather Barrera, The Hearn Family, Jenny Candelaria, Joanna Sitars, Linda Eckloff, Marie Caudill, Maria Condor, and Melissa Ricci. Thank you to these wonderful ladies and gentlemen for bringing us today's video. Without further ado, we are going to learn more about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. So this month we were listening to the Horn Concerto No. 3 in E-flat major by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And there's just, where do you begin with Mozart? There are so many pieces that are absolutely phenomenal. I just didn't even know which one to choose. I kind of just chose this one because I like it. But his music is so transcendent. And last night I was doing some writing and I was just listening to Mozart the whole time I was writing, and every single piece just transports you. There's something so elegant and genius about his work. And so I'm such a huge Mozart fan. Right now I'm going to share 13 facts about Mozart's life. This is from an article on Mental Floss, so we can get an idea about him and what he was all about. But if you don't know much about Mozart, I do recommend you watch the film Amadeus. That does show his biography, and he had a very interesting and short life. Okay, so I'm going to read you 13 facts about Mozart's life from Mental Floss. Number 1, Mozart's father thrust him into the music business. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born in Salzburg, Austria on January 27, 1756, to his mother Anna Maria and his father Leopold Mozart, who was a composer and music teacher at Salzburg Cathedral. Little Wolfgang and his older sister Maria Anna were taught to play a stringed keyboard instrument from a young age. Both children showed immense musical talent. By the time he was 4 years old, Mozart could learn a song in just 30 minutes. Number 2, Mozart hung out with a young Marie Antoinette. When he was 6, Mozart's family was performing at royal courts, and he began to perform concerts himself. At the Habsburg summer residence outside Vienna, Mozart met Archduchess Marie Antoinette, who was 2 months his senior. It's said that she helped Mozart when he slipped on a polished floor. In return, he proposed marriage to the future Queen of France. The experience in Vienna would lead to the beginning of a wildly successful tour across Europe that stopped at dozens of cities and royal courts between 1763 and 1766. Number 3, he wrote his first opera at 11. Mozart took in Paris, London, Amsterdam, Versailles, and more as he traveled with his family. At one concert in Munich, Mozart and his sister played together for 3 straight hours, and they wowed audiences everywhere they went. While playing a series of concerts in Paris, Mozart published his first piece of music, a violin sonata in 5 parts. He was 8. At age 11, he wrote his first true opera, Apollo a Hyacinthus. A series of tours of Italian cities beginning in December 1769 confirmed Mozart's preternatural talent. He was commissioned to write operas for Milan's Carnival, was admitted to Bologna's prestigious Accademia Philharmonica, and directed the 3 performances of his opera. At 15, he wrote that he was hearing whole operas at home in my head. Mozart later admitted to feeling as proud as a peacock about his fame. Number 4. His early triumphs didn't last, and then his father blamed him for his mother's death. After the Italian tours, Mozart returned to Salzburg and began composing for the court of its new ruler, Prince Archbishop Hieronymus von Colloredo, but the work was unchallenging. In 1778, Mozart's ever-ambitious father sent him to Paris with an order to put yourself in the company of the great. But now, Mozart was 22 and no longer the boy wonder who hung out with Marie Antoinette on his 3-year European tour. He was an adult musician with a plain, pockmarked face who could barely speak French. Left out of high society and running out of money, Mozart and his mother, who was chaperoning him, holed up in a cold and dilapidated hotel in the 2nd arrondissement. His mother fell ill with a fever, and she died on July 3, 1778, at the age of 57. Mozart was all alone and too scared to tell his father what had happened to his mother. Instead, he got his friend Abbe Bullinger to tell him the news. Leopold Mozart ended up blaming his son for her death, believing that if his mother hadn't accompanied him to Paris, things would have turned out differently. Number 5. He kind of hated working in Salzburg. Following the Paris stay, Mozart went back to Salzburg to live with his father and sister via Strasbourg, where he played 3 poorly attended concerts. At home, he found a job as a court organist, but wasn't happy. He wanted more for himself, once writing, "To waste one's life in inactivity in such a beggarly place is really very sad." The worst part of staying in Salzburg was dealing with the stinginess of his patron, von Colloredo, who wanted him to compose only music meant for the local church. Despite his difficulties during this period, Mozart nevertheless wrote 2 important compositions, Symphony No. 32 in G major, that's K318, and Symphony No. 33 in B-flat major, K319. Number 6. He moved to Vienna in 1781 and his life changed dramatically. In Vienna, the Age of Enlightenment was in full swing. Knights in the capital belonged to the wealthy, who attended the finest masked balls and operas. Starting off as a freelance musician with just 1 student, Mozart worked his way into the heart of Viennese social life, propelled by the popular appeal of his piano concertos and symphonies. One biographer noted that audiences for his piano concertos had the experience of witnessing the transformation and perfection of a major musical genre. Soon, Mozart could be seen going about town in gold-trimmed hats and red coats with mother-of-pearl buttons. A year after moving to Vienna, he married the soprano Constanze Weber. They had their first child in 1783, a boy named Raymond Leopold. Number 7. He insisted his children shouldn't be breastfed. He wrote, "I was quite determined that even if she were able to do so, my wife was never to nurse her child. Yet I was equally determined that my child was never to take the milk of a stranger. I wanted the child to be brought up on water, like my sister and myself." Okay, that is just weird. Feeding infants on barley water instead of milk was common practice among the middle classes at the time. Mozart did eventually give in to his midwife's and mother-in-law's pleas to have a wet nurse breastfeed the child, but unfortunately, Raymond died 2 months after he was born. Only 2 of Mozart's 6 children survived infancy. Number 8. Mozart had a pet starling. Starlings are amazing mimics, and the one Mozart brought home from a Vienna pet shop on May 27, 1784, had been singing a movement from one of the composer's pure, bright songs, the Piano Concerto No. 17 in G major, K453. Mozart's starling was his constant companion. It was there for the composer's move to a ritzy Vienna apartment in the Domgasse, just steps from St. Stephen's Cathedral. It was there for the birth of 2 more sons, Carl Thomas Mozart and Johann Thomas Leopold, and the subsequent death of Johann a month after he was born. It witnessed Mozart achieving real fame for his symphonies and arias. Number 9. He didn't attend his father's funeral. Around a week after Mozart's father died on May 28, 1787, his pet starling passed away. Mozart didn't go back to Salzburg for his father's funeral, but he did bury his starling in the grandest way. Mourners in heavy veils marched in procession, sang hymns, and listened to Mozart recite a poem he'd written for the occasion. By a tiny graveside, the world's greatest composer spoke with love of his starling, gay and bright, who was not naughty quite. Number 10. His music spanned every form and style of his time. From chamber music like Serenade No. 13 in G major, aka Ein klein Nachtmusik, that's a little night music, to beloved operas such as The Magic Flute, Don Giovanni, and Così fan tutte, Mozart's compositions redefined many forms of music: symphonies and concertos, harmony music for wind instruments, chamber music for string quartets, sonatas for the piano, masses and choral and church music. All were parts of his oeuvre. What makes Mozart's work so revolutionary? Romantic composer Johannes Brahms noted the exceptional purity of his music. To the American composer Leonard Bernstein, Mozart's works were bathed in a glitter that could have come only from the 18th century, from that age of light, lightness, and enlightenment. Over it all hovers the greater spirit that is Mozart's, the spirit of compassion, of universal love, even of suffering, a spirit that knows no age, that belongs to all ages. Or in the words of playwright Arthur Miller, Mozart is happiness before it has gotten defined. I would agree with all of those descriptions of Mozart's work. Number 11, Mozart's last composition remained unfinished. His final commissioned piece was Requiem Mass in D minor, K626. Mozart died before it was finished, but his student Franz Xaver Sussmayer completed the work and delivered it to Austria's Count Franz von Walsegg, who had commissioned the piece to memorialize his deceased wife. It's believed that von Walsegg intended to pass the Mass off as his own. That plan was scuppered by Constanze, who let it be known that it was, in fact, Mozart who had received the commission and that she was due a fee for the work. Number 12. The reason for his early death probably wasn't poison. Mozart died when he was 35 years old on December 5, 1791. The coroner reported the cause as severe miliary fever, but a rumored suggestion he had been poisoned by Antonio Salieri, an influential opera composer and an exceptional musician who taught Franz Schubert, Ludwig van Beethoven, and Franz Liszt. The rumor became entrenched in pop culture, largely due to Peter Shaffer's 1979 play Amadeus and the subsequent Academy Award-winning 1984 film adaptation. But the gossip was seen as baseless back in the 18th century, having stemmed from a false report of poisoning in a Berlin newspaper a week after the composer passed away. The real cause behind Mozart's early death is likely much less nefarious. It was probably a fatal strep infection. Number 13, his music and life are still widely celebrated. Named one of the greatest people of the millennium by Time, Mozart's fame has only grown since his death 226 years ago. Salzburg celebrates with an 11-day birthday party for the composer every January. In fact, an impressive percentage of Salzburg's economy is built on Mozart tourism, with everything from Mozart keychains to t-shirts to chocolate marzipan Mozart balls for sale in the city's historic old town. So there you go. There are 13 interesting facts about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. I hope that you gleaned a lot of insight from those. I know I did. All right, I'm going to go take a lunch break and I will be back to share with you more about our artist in residence this month, Mary Cassatt. Okay, I'm back from my break. I had lunch. I even painted my nails and now I have a cup of tea. It's really a big thing to transition from one amazing artist to another, and I needed to take a quick break before we discuss Mary Cassatt. So let's get into chic assignment number 2 to enjoy the art of Mary Cassatt. Yes, in the original chic assignment, I pronounced her name as Mary Cassatt. I have always called her that, just from my art history class in college, and plus I created a little rhyme for my children to remember her name. Mary Cassatt had a very nice hat, but as many of you pointed out, her name is actually pronounced Mary Cassatt, so I apologize for that, and I'm probably going to slip back and forth between the two pronunciations unintentionally throughout this. Okay, so we're going to look at her artwork. as I speak to you and read to you about her life, I found a wonderful document from Google Arts and Culture that really goes in depth into her life in a few categories. And I also have a wonderful short film that shares her life story for you as well that I can link down below. My favorite aspect about Mary Cassatt was how she would capture the mother-child relationship, which is the most special and beautiful relationship in the world. And her paintings that capture mothers and children are just so touching to me, and I love them. I have emotions bubbling up inside me when I look at them. So let's learn more about Mary Cassatt and what made her such an incredible artist. Mary Cassatt was an American painter and printmaker who boldly rebelled against the expectations set for her as a woman in the 19th century and traveled to Europe to find her independence as a professional artist. She made her name as an impressionist, renowned for her intimate depictions of women, particularly mothers and children, and for her insight into the female inner life. She descended from a stockbroker and bankers. Cassatt was born into an upper-middle-class family full of successful business types. Her father was a stockbroker, and her mother came from a banking family, and one of her brothers became president of the Pennsylvania Railroad. It's safe to say that her family put a lot of emphasis on education and success, which for Mary meant preparing to be a good wife and mother, not a career in the arts. Cassatt's father did not support her ambition to paint professionally and refused to give her any money that would go towards buying her art supplies. But determined to rebel and gain financial independence, she continued to paint and seek commissions until she did just that. She found her own way to educate herself. Despite her parents' objections, Cassatt began studying at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia when she was 15. However, Cassatt found the attitudes of the male students and teachers patronizing and the pace too slow. As a woman, she was banned from using live models and was only permitted to draw from inanimate objects. Fed up, she left and traveled to Paris with her mother and applied to study privately with masters from the École des Beaux-Arts. Women were not allowed to actually attend the school. And she spent many long days in the Louvre, copying works from there. She was one of 2 American women to first exhibit in the Salon. Cassatt began taking classes with Charles Chaplin and Thomas Couture, which she found to be a much more enriching experience as the students took trips to the countryside where the students could draw from life. Soon after, in 1868, one of her paintings was accepted for the Paris Salon, making her one of the first American women to exhibit there, the other being Elizabeth Jane Gardner, who was accepted at the same time. She lost some of her early work in the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. In 1870, Cassatt returned home to live with her family in Pennsylvania, and with her parents still objecting to her career, she traveled to Chicago to try and sell some of her paintings. She'd already tried her hand in New York, placing 2 in a gallery there, but although her work had attracted many admirers, she found no buyers. In Chicago, things got worse when the Great Chicago Fire, which burned for 3 days and ravaged just over 3 square miles of Chicago, destroyed much of her work. Fortunately, shortly after, the Archbishop of Pittsburgh commissioned her to paint 2 copies of works by Correggio, and the money allowed Cassatt to travel back to Europe, to Parma, Italy. She was the only American artist to exhibit with the Impressionists in Paris. Cassatt permanently moved to Paris in 1874, but began to find the conventional tastes of the Salon tiring, and she disdained the way that they were often dismissive of female artists. One day she was approached by Edgar Degas and invited to exhibit with the Impressionists, who were considered radical for their lack of formality, varied techniques, and use of vibrant color in distinct brushstrokes. The 1879 exhibition that she participated in, displaying 11 of her works, was their most successful and most profitable one to date. Cassatt used her takings to purchase a painting by Degas and one by Monet, evidently inheriting her family's shrewd business sense. She was active with the Impressionists until 1886 and also participated in their first exhibition in the U.S. She became best buds with Edgar Degas. Cassatt's introduction into the Impressionist circle began a long period of collaboration between her and Degas. They shared similar tastes, had neighboring studios. Degas taught Cassatt engraving and to use pastels, and Cassatt helped him sell his work in America. Both of them never married, and there has been speculation about whether or not they were in a romantic relationship, but none of their letters survived to assess their level of intimacy. Cassatt frequently posed for Degas, and Degas produced 2 prints of Cassatt at the Louvre. She was inspired by the Japanese masters. In 1890, an exhibition of the Japanese masters came to Paris, and Cassatt became an ardent fan of the ukiyo-e genre. She admired the simplicity and clarity of their lines and their use of color blocking. She emulated their style the following year with a show of colored dry point and aquatint, a variant of etching prints, one of the very few artists to be producing these types of prints at the time. She was instrumental in developing collections of some big American museums. When the Impressionists first exhibited in America, she encouraged her art collector friend, Louisine Elder, and her wealthy husband, Harry Havemeyer, to begin collecting the works of the Impressionists on a grand scale. It was a very sensible suggestion indeed, as a lot of their collection are now star pieces at the MoMA in New York, and many Impressionist works now sell for millions. In the early 19th century, Cassatt also served as an advisor to many other art collectors, with the stipulation that they eventually donated their purchases to American art museums. She had to retire early because of her eyesight. In 1910, Cassatt traveled to Egypt and was so in awe of the ancient art she saw there that she found herself with a bit of a creative block. She claimed that she was crushed by the strength of this art, saying, "I fought against it, but it conquered. It is surely the greatest art the past has left us. How are my feeble hands to ever paint the effect on me?" Incidentally, the following year, Cassatt was diagnosed with diabetes, rheumatism, and cataracts, and by 1914, she was almost completely blind, forcing her into early retirement. It's interesting because we also studied Georgia O'Keeffe, who also became blind in later life, and a few other artists. I just find that to be, so interesting. All right, number 10. Even though she couldn't paint, she used her art to support the suffrage movement. When Cassatt could no longer paint, she still found a way to make changes to the restrictions pinned on women with her art. Throughout her career, she had been opposed to being stereotyped as a woman artist and being treated different from her male contemporaries. Even when she joined the Impressionist cause, she was still unable to attend cafes with them, as it would have been looked down upon, and was forced only to meet with them privately or at art exhibitions. Her good friend Louisine Havemeyer was a staunch feminist and put on an exhibition to support the women's suffrage movement. Cassatt contributed 18 of her paintings for the cause. Although her recognition came slowly and her family never truly appreciated her contribution to the arts, she was always overshadowed by her famous railway executive older brother. Cassatt had a substantial impact on the art world and acted as an inspiration to female artists everywhere. And that is the story of Mary Cassatt. I think she had a very inspiring life, and I am always incredibly moved by stories of women artists from the past who fought against all odds to get their art out there. You see similar themes in a lot of these artists. So with Mary Cassatt, she didn't really have the support of her family, and it is kind of frustrating to know that they never fully understood how important her work was and would be for generations to come. For example, she was overshadowed by her railway executive older brother, but now none of us really know who he is, but everybody knows who Mary Cassatt is. So I really enjoyed studying her artwork this month. I would have to say my favorite piece of hers is the one where the mother is sewing. It just, I don't know, I love it. It just captures so much. I love how the little girl's looking at you and the mother is just trying to complete a task yet also there with her daughter. It just speaks volumes and I love it. All right, moving on to chic assignment number 3, which is to use something elegant that you own but hardly ever use. I hope that you enjoyed my part 2 video that I put out earlier in the month. Now, I generally use a lot of my elegant things, and so I had to really kind of look for things that I don't use that much, and for me it was really the lemon loaf pan and my special bakeware, because I do have a lot of specialty kitchen items but I hardly ever use them. So that is what I have really tried to use this month. I think going forward, something that I'd like to use is that brooch that I have. I haven't worn that on a daily regular basis because I'm not used to wearing a brooch, but I might do that going forward. So please let us know what elegant thing you are using this month that you hardly ever use. And chic assignment number 4 was to spend meaningful time outdoors. And so I have been doing this every day. I love to go barefoot in my garden and just check out the plants. They are thriving. The garden is hopping, plants are multiplying. It's gonna be a jungle in about a month. So you'll see snippets of this in my homemaking videos. I love to show you the progress of the garden. And so I have been spending a lot of meaningful time outdoors, just kind of wandering around there. But I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing how you have been spending meaningful time outdoors and all of your chic assignment updates. Thank you so much to the Elegant Connoisseurs for supporting my work here on the Daily Connoisseur and for bringing us the chic assignment check-in. If you are new, I would love to have you as a subscriber. If you have a friend who would enjoy the chic assignments, please invite them to watch by sharing this video. Thank you so much for joining me here, and I will see you next time. Bye!